As guests listened to the gruesome tales of a double murder in a sage-green house in Fall River, Massachusetts, the tiny hands of children who were murdered 100 years before play with toys on the floors above. Hello, this is Everything is Spooky in the Dark, the podcast for WanderingCrystal.com. I'm your host Crystal, and today we will talk about the ghosts that haunt the Lizzie Borden House and the brutal double murder that took place over 100 years ago. While the house is famous for the grisly murders and the mystery behind who committed these crimes, I want to find out who or what haunts the famous Massachusetts murder house. Let's start with the murders. The Lizzie Borden House is infamous for the horrific axe murders that took place on a hot August morning in 1892. August 4th started like any other day. At 9 a.m., 5 people were alive, but 2 of them were dead just a few hours later. The Borden House was home to Andrew Borden, the father to Lizzie, her stepmother Abby Borden, Lizzie's sister Emma, and Bridget, the maid. On the day of the murders, Emma, the eldest daughter of Andrew Borden and Lizzie's older sister, was out of town for a few days at a dress fitting. But the Bordens had another guest staying in the house, John Morris. John was the brother-in-law to Andrew Borden from his first marriage and the uncle to Lizzie and Emma. His visit was mysterious because he didn't bring any luggage with him for his overnight stay. However, sources say he frequently visited a few years leading up to the murders, so his visit was not entirely out of the blue. Still odd that he did come without luggage. Did he just not brush his teeth that night? The morning started like any other. At 7 a.m., Abby, Andrew, and John had breakfast while Lizzie slept in. John was the first to leave the house. He said he was heading out to visit relatives at 8:45 a.m. Mr. Borden stuck around the house for 30 minutes before heading into town to attend to some business. He was a very wealthy businessman whose net worth was around $300K, translating to $10 million in today's money. While the men were out of the house, Abby and Bridget started to clean. First, Abby sent Bridget, the maid, outside to wash the windows while she took care of tidying up the guest room that Uncle John was staying in. This was when the first murder happened. Abby was struck 19 times in the back of the head, landing hard on the floor next to the freshly made bed, blood pooling out of her skull as she passed away. They say that the way she was hit shows that she turned after the first few strikes to see who was wielding the axe that took her life. As she lay lifeless on the floor, her body got colder as her life, and her blood slowly drained from her body. Her murder went unnoticed for 20 minutes to an hour and a half after the chaos that was happening 1 floor down on a couch in the lounge. While Mrs. Borden was dead in the guest room, Mr. Borden came home early from work as he felt ill. Unfortunately, the door to the house was locked from the inside, very unusual for the Borden house, so Bridget had to let him in, and she mentioned she could hear Lizzie laughing from upstairs. Upon entering his home, Andrew Borden decided to lay on the couch and take a nap to see if he could feel better. But instead, he would never wake up as he was struck 11 times to the side of his face in his sleep. There was so much mess from the murder that Andrew's blood seeped through the floorboards into the basement. As a result, the stain from his blood can still be seen in the basement over 100 years later. You can go right now and see the bloodstains for yourself. After Andrew was brutally attacked with an axe, he was found by Lizzie. She yelled out for Bridget, "Come down quick! Father's dead! Someone's come in and killed him!" What happened before the murder of Mr. Borden? After cleaning the windows, Bridget went upstairs to take a nap and was jolted awake by Lizzie calling out for her. She claims that when she came downstairs, Lizzie was standing over her father's body wearing a blue dress that didn't have a single drop of blood. If you wield an axe and ruthlessly kill someone, you're going to be covered in their blood. So where was everyone at the time of the murders? We know that Emma and Uncle John were out of the house. At the time of Abby's murder, Bridget was finished cleaning the windows and was allegedly napping in her room. Lizzie claims she was outside in the barn eating pears to cool down from the hot morning. Abby was already dead when Andrew came home, but but her death went unnoticed until Andrew's lifeless body was found by Lizzie. So what really happened? And who killed Abby and Andrew and why? Perhaps someone broke into the house, murdered Mrs. Borden, and then came back an hour later and finished the job by killing Mr. Borden? I guess it's possible, but I doubt it. I have a few theories, but let's go over the most popular one. Lizzie did it. But why? Andrew Borden was a very wealthy man, but he was frugal. He refused to get electricity and plumbing installed in the house, so everyone got to use chamber pots. How fun. Is this enough to kill someone? All Lizzie wanted was a life of luxury, with a massive house on the hill. She was irritated by how strict her father was with his money, and wanted a better life. Is this a good enough reason to kill her father? Maybe. However, 5 years before the murders, Mr. Borden bought a house for Mrs. Borden's sister. The fact that he spent so much money on his sister-in-law angered Lizzie and Emma so much that they stopped calling Abby Mother and started to refer to her as Mrs. Borden. They had an intense hatred for Abby because she was taking away their money. Plus, they feared that if their father died before their stepmother, she would keep their inheritance and the girls would be left with nothing. So is this a reason to murder someone? I mean, people have killed for a lot less, so it is a possibility. Why kill Andrew, though? Perhaps due to him being frugal and strict? Image was big in the Victorian era, and Lizzie was tired of being looked down on by people who lived in the rich part of town. When Mr. Borden's body was found, it appeared that he was asleep when he was murdered, so it is unlikely he walked in on Abby being murdered. The reason he was also murdered is unknown. It could really be anything. There is another theory that I will not be touching on in this podcast, but it's the incest theory between Mr. Borden and his daughters. Could Lizzie have murdered both her father and stepmother? Why wasn't she covered in blood? And why didn't Bridget hear any of the commotion happening in the house? Did Lizzie and Bridget work together in murdering the Bordens? Bridget was the maid, so she could clean up easily. Plus, she wanted to quit several times, but Abby kept begging her to stay. Was this finally her way out? Another theory, which is relatively new, and looking back at everything, I'm surprised this wasn't looked into at the time of the murders. Uncle John Morse claims he was out of the house during the murders. He had a very detailed account of where he was during the murders, such as remembering the number of the train car he was on, the conductor's number, and he introduced himself to 6 priests who were on board. That seems quite excessive, like he was trying to ensure his alibi was airtight. As he was so close to the house, he could quickly return and murder Abby and Andrew. But why? Apparently, he was fighting with Andrew over some farmland. If the murders were only 20 to 90 minutes apart, he could have come back and killed and left again. And the murderer had to come up to Abby and Andrew without arousing suspicion. Could he have done it? Or do you think it was a planned murder between Bridget, Lizzie, and John? Even if Bridget wasn't involved, she did benefit from the murders. I'm not sure if John benefited from the murders because he wasn't seen as a suspect, so his life after the murders is a mystery. I genuinely believe Lizzie and John worked together, and Bridget, if she wasn't involved in the murders, was involved in the cover-up and was paid off for her silence. In the end, after a trial that lasted 2 weeks, Lizzie Borden was acquitted and found innocent by an all-male jury. They said they didn't have enough solid evidence and honestly didn't believe a woman could commit such unwomanly crimes. A woman wielding an axe? Unheard of. Poisoning people was much more womanlike. I guess she really let the patriarchy work for her. Now I want to talk about the ghosts that haunt the Borden house. You can take a tour, a ghost tour, or even spend the night at the Lizzie Borden house. Staff and guests have reported paranormal activity that happens in the house regularly. Everything from doors opening on their own to a rocking chair rocking by itself. Ooh, that is one reason I'm never gonna have a rocking chair in my bedroom, because I'm gonna wake up and it's gonna be rocking. Creepy. Anyway, you would think that the ghosts that walk the halls would belong to Mr. and Mrs. Borden, but rumors have it that the spirits that linger in the house are children. But who are these children and where did they come from? Because Lizzie was 32 and she was the youngest. No, Bridget was 26, the maid. She was the youngest in the house, but she's still alive. No, she's not alive anymore. She's not alive anymore. The 2 young children belonged to Lizzie's great-aunt Eliza. 40 years before the double murder at the Borden house, Eliza, who lived in the house next door, threw her children down a well before slitting her own throat. So in theory, the girls were already haunting the house when Lizzie Borden murdered her family. The people who own the house now do have a room full of toys on the top level. The toys get moved around the room and the house every day, and guests have reported hearing laughter coming from the top floor. The laughter of children. Eliza has been heard crying in the basement, so she allegedly haunts the house as well. I wonder why all of these spirits haunt the Borden house rather than the house that they perished in. Unfortunately, I could not find any information on when these ghosts were discovered, but I watched the Lizzie Borden episode of The Dead Files, and the host Amy did not mention any children haunting the house. However, she believed that the house was partially haunted by Lizzie, and there was a spirit of a man, probably Andrew Borden. I couldn't bring myself to watch the Lizzie Borden episode of Ghost Adventures because I cannot handle the excessive reactions to the smallest noises during that show. But they may have been the first ones to notice the children. If you know, let me know. Another ghost that is rumored to haunt the house is Mr. Borden himself. Guests will leave coins near the picture of him in his bedroom out of fear that he will follow them home. And if people do not leave coins, they will often leave the house with a few scratches. When people spend the night, they usually try to reach out to the ghosts that haunt the house to find answers. Who really killed Mr. and Mrs. Borden? Were the children ghosts already there during the murders? Or do you think it's just a story created by the owners to arouse more interest in the supernatural aspect of the house? Make it spookier for guests who spend the night and need a little more than the history of an unsolved double murder by axe. Would you spend a night in the Lizzie Borden house in Massachusetts? Would you try to reach out to the ghosts that live there? And who do you think committed the murders? I truly believe it was Lizzie and Uncle John. I believe John is the one who swung the axe, which explains why Lizzie was free of blood. And she is the one who went down for the murders because she didn't seem like a real threat as she was just a small woman. After she was acquitted, she bought her dream house on the hill in Fall River and lived there until her death. She never really had the life she wanted though, because everyone in town suspected she murdered her parents and got off scot-free. So who do you think killed Mr. and Mrs. Borden? Why don't we take a trip down to Fall River and ask the ghosts together? And that's it. Thank you so much for listening to Everything is Spooky in the Dark, the podcast for WanderingCrystal.com. Bye.